Hi, I'm your host, Danny, founder of Optivide. At Optivide, we support people in solving the climate problem with financial confidence. In our podcast, we will bring climate stakeholders to share one climate solution that they're working on in order to make our world a better place. In today's session, we will talk about sustainable cruise. For people who love ocean outdoor activities, a cruise is a vital transportation to visit our ocean. Every year, millions of travelers explore our ocean. But how can we ensure that our ocean love doesn't harm it? Let us introduce Hugo and Jen, the founders of PositivePolar, who advocate sustainable cruise for polar regions. Hello, Hugo. Hello, Jen.
Hi,
Hi.
very glad to be here.
It's very nice to have both of you in our today's podcast. So to start with, could you tell us about your personal background and what brings you into this field?
Sure. First, I'll just say thank you so much for having us today. And to set some context, PositivePolar is a business that takes paying passengers on exciting expedition cruises while restoring ocean wildlife. Captain Hugo, had the vision for this company, and I was very happy to join and help him form this company 2 years ago. My background is in many years of biotech, and I have spent a whole career translating science into businesses, profitable businesses that serve humanity. I'm excited to do this in the ocean.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Yes, well, my background, I'm a Chilean Navy staff officer from the reserve. I'm a sailor and naval engineer, naval aviator, rescue helicopter pilot, and now an entrepreneur. So what brings me to here was own experiences that I lived in Patagonia and Antarctica. When I was a child, I did enjoy these incredible winters, just like the movies of the 80s in Punta Arenas, playing with the snow and ice skating freely in the lagoons. And then I was hoping the same for my child. And when we arrived there again, there was almost no more snow anymore. And instead of there being playing outside freely in the snow and ice skating as I did, they spent most of the winter inside because it was raining, right? So that was what really shocked me, and I started research about what to do. Finally, was the ones that bring this idea to my mind.
I see. So you observe like the climate change happens in the place that you live in and decide to start the organizations to solve the problem or at least mitigate the current negative impacts.
Not so directly. I did observe with my own observations. I did saw how the drama of this and that combined with especially 3 experiences that I did live finally decided me to start the business. Those experiences were in my first Antarctic trip, I was in charge of the Naval Antarctic Helicopter Squadron. And when we were arriving to Antarctica, they called us because a cruise ship was in an emergency. We did have to make the rescue of these cruise ships in the year 2008. It was kind of December, if I don't, yeah, it was December, beginning of December. And when we rescued all of them after the operation, I did have time with them. It was totally different of the typical cruise people that I was expecting, in the good sense. They were very wealthy, educated, respectful. And I said, oh, this is kind of interesting. These people is not what I was expecting. They are much more respectful in the good sense. And then I was in charge of the Chilean Navy icebreakers. I was the second in command. And I did have to share with scientists. And I did fly with them, I did sail with them, and they were always asking me like to do more and more because they have a very limited budget. And we were always telling them, hey, well, we cannot sail more, we cannot fly more, we have to be according to the schedule. I was kind of frustrated because that's such an important work, and we were not able to accomplish all of that they wanted. In recent years, I started working as a commercial helicopter pilot in Antarctica. I finally confirmed that these passengers, as I said, were wealthy, educated, but also eager to do something positive about nature. And that is where I met Jen. Knowing her, we decided to start a business together.
When you and Jen start to have this mind, so like starting a new business and new organizations, how do you choose between for-profit, non-profit, and social enterprise? Because like we know finance do has its own power to scale up these solutions. However, sometimes when we comes to solving the climate problem, people will consider it as kind of the solutions that should be classified as a nonprofit. So we would love to learn from your own perspective. How do you decide between different types of organizations?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I will answer first. I did go to a business school, the most important business university in Chile. I did have a master in strategic direction and business administration. Because of my experiences in the expedition cruising with this commercial pilot, I did saw that there were a lot of money involved. So I said, well, these scientists really need money. I said to myself, why don't we solve the problems bringing guests together with the scientists? Because finally, they will able to see, enjoy, and finance this work. So that was my thought. And these expedition cruise lines are for profit. They are not non-profit. Well, I want to create really also a more broader baseline. So the guest will finance the science. And that's not possible with a non-profit. It has to be profit because we take the profit from the guest of the company and then we invest that profit that we have earned into science. That's the model that we have in PositivePolar.
Broadly speaking, it's my experience that nonprofit and donations and government and philanthropy at large are extremely important in catalyzing new understanding of technology and science. It's a critical role in basic research that those entities together play. However, or it's really more of an and, it's not an or, as that science advances towards potential expansion or scalability, as we start to answer fundamental questions and move towards translation and broader scalability, certainly in my career, which is again developing medicines and diagnostics, we recognize that work really requires corporations and investor capital. It does not happen. It's very risky. It's very expensive. And unless there is an opportunity to realize potential large returns, it's very difficult to move that science all the way through to deployment of products and services to help people. So I would say that in the area of climate, there are some solutions, and we're happy to talk about those that we're most excited about, that have reached that critical inflection point where the science, the fundamental understanding seems very clear. However, there's still very many important translational science questions and how to scale it safely and responsibly. And that is the point at which bringing in investor capital can really move that along very quickly. So it's not an or, it's an and on our company set up as a for-profit, but we intend to work with that critical science that's largely being conducted in academia and other institutions that are funded by philanthropy and governments. We want to help get that out of the lab when ready and now move it towards actual solutions that can help very quickly. And that is what corporations and for-profit motives and incentives tend to do very well, and particularly as we've seen in the biotech and pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, without finance, climate action is unsustainable. So both of you do bring up a very good point that donation and philanthropy is very important. But if we're going to move the science into the next step, we do need more capital from investors. And if we could use the for-profit organizations to drive this funding into the scientific community, we could unlock lots of positive change.
Yes, and what we've learned again in other areas, and I'll just speak about here, but aerospace is another terrific. There's many other industries. I'm just more familiar with the creation of medicine, so that's why I use that as context. But not to say that's the only area. But you do need then a translational platform. You need a special series of investors and companies that are very skilled at that space between the basic research and the deployment of a scaled solution. And that space is where you're still answering very important and critical questions about how this might play out, and is it safe and is it effective? And you need to have both the science and the deployment of and real data informing both of it and iterating together. And it's that iterative piece, which we call translational research in pharmaceutical industry, that PositivePolar wants to play in. We want to be the platform that enables that connection of that science that is ready to be translated, and those companies that are eager to develop products and solutions. And we want to be right in the middle, allowing them to use our platform, largely paid for with passenger money, but also accepting money from corporations and potentially in the future grants or things like that. But we're set up as a for-profit company. We can help really catalyze that translational work, get it going very quickly, since that seems to be a big gap, particularly for ocean, because it's very expensive and not easy to get out there, right? Especially in the deep ocean. And so yeah, that's really the fundamental to PositivePolar.
Yeah.
Speaking to the translational work that PositivePolar trying to bridge between different stakeholders, could you tell us a little bit about the problem that PositivePolar is working on to solve? Because sustainable cruise is like a big topic. So we'd love to dive deeper into the problems.
Yeah. Do you want to say more about your research and how you ended up with the whale pump in particular, this area?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The particular problem that we are initially focused is in the whale restoration through the cruise lines.
Yeah. The imbalance that fundamentally exists in the ocean, the imbalance. And so Hugo will say more about the drivers of that.
Exactly, the imbalance. Because when I was researching of what to do because of this climate change, I did hear about a scientist called John Martin, and he said, "Give me a half tanker of iron, and I will give you an ice age." I said, "Whoa, this is this is very powerful, right?" Why did he said that? He said that because he did travel to Antarctica. He was expecting much more whales than the one that he really saw. So he said, "Oh, something. There's a lack of a particular mineral that is called iron, and why is that lack of iron?" And the lack of iron was produced mostly because we catch almost all of the whales, including my ancestors. They migrated from Denmark to Chile for that purpose. On that years, of course, that was in name of progress, and we understand that was like the oil for in that centuries, right? But we create this unbalance because the whales, what they do, they feed deep in the sea, and they release their feces in the surface. And that feces in the surface are biological iron, mostly. So that biological iron finally create a bloom of phytoplankton, and the phytoplankton is the base of the food chain that really feed all of the animals of the sea. It's a chain of life, right? So that is what we are focused at the beginning of trying to mimic what whales should be doing right now in Antarctica, but because they are not so many, we are going to mimic what whales would have done with our cruise ship, and deploying this biological iron after our wake or in our wake, right?
Yeah. So I think what's important there is it's a fascinating area to think about the whale pump and to recognize that there are still across the board 70% estimated less whales or whales that are missing if we had not had industrial whaling. So we are nowhere close to having repopulated the whales, nowhere close. So that has caused a huge imbalance in the ocean. We see the consequences in the loss of biodiversity. And what Hugo didn't mention is the impact on our climate, because that phytoplankton not only feeds the base of the food chain, it also helps to sink carbon, not to mention all of those additional fish and whales that sink carbon in their bodies, but also the phytoplankton itself as its respirator.
Yes, exactly.
And so, so there may be a significant, and that is a bit of what John Martin, the scientist, first was really popularized back in the late 80s, that if you were to replace what whales should be doing, which is basically pooping along the top of the ocean in the parts of the ocean that they go, then we may not have as much of the climate crisis, maybe not even at all that we have now, because the ocean would be able to do what it does more naturally. It would have the substrate it needs. And so as Hugo notes, we plan to fill that gap. We're not doing anything that's above what nature would have intended, what should be there, and investigating that as we go with scientists to understand how to do that, how to measure it, and how to scale it so that we could have, together with other ships that are in the right parts of the ocean for this, the places that whales would normally be, how could we together scale this and make a big impact, not only for growing more fish, which will be great for fisheries and humanity and communities, but also the impact it will have for sure on the climate. And we need to be able to understand how much of that impact we can actually have.
I know it for my father. My father, he's a captain of a fish factory ship. Now he's almost out of job because there's no more fish stocks anymore. So and that is not only happening in Chile, it's happening in Africa, in North America, in Europe for sure. So what we want to show is a way of ocean restoration, of the ocean wildlife restoration in general. And with that, we will have more biodiversity. And also, as Jen was saying, it's calculated that 10% of that biomass sink naturally, at least 10%. So just having more wildlife in the ocean will naturally sink carbon. And we think that if we scale that, we can really, as Jen was saying, compensate what we are putting into that atmosphere right now.
The solution is very unique and innovative that focus on how to regenerate the polar ecosystem and at the same time to mitigate the climate change. So it's somewhat different from what we have seen of the current solutions from the cruise company. What they do is they just basically enhance the engine efficiency or practice the sustainable accommodations or change the food supply to the vegan cuisine. But all these does not directly support the biodiversity regeneration or mitigate the climate impacts. So
exactly, we are doing a positive action. That's why we are called PositivePolar. Yeah.
Yes, we'll take all of those mitigation actions to ensure the ship itself, and we leave no harm, we cause no harm, and that is what the other cruise lines and responsibly take care of. But to Hugo's point, we want to actually have a net positive impact on the environment when we sail, and that's really the foundation of the company and why we're called PositivePolar. And what's differentiating about what we do is exactly that.
Yeah,
I would be a little bit curious about between the two goals, right? The first goal is to regenerate our ocean ecosystem.
Yes.
But at the same time, PositivePolar also want to invite the customers to explore the Antarctica. So we'd love to learn how PositivePolar balance the two different needs in the same cruise.
very good question. Yes, the idea is to be an embassy of this ocean restoration. So to be an embassy of this ocean restoration, we need to show this to people, because, and that was also one of my ideas, you love and support what you experience, right? That's a natural fact. So why I think that this ocean restoration, or whatever you want to call it, or ocean science that has been there for a while, has been almost stacked, because it's very difficult to be known. A lot of people don't know about this, and bringing the guest on board finally will unleash this ocean science. And in Antarctica, we have, of course, in the Arctic and all the places in between, the Chilean fjords, the Caribbean, we have planned our itineraries so the scientists can make their work, and also the guest can enjoy seeing how they work, but also enjoy the special kind of tourist attractions that has the different places, right? So that is how we expect to to do both things that will finally multiply itself. Because here 1 + 1 is much more than 2. 1 + 1 will be 3, 4, 5, because we are creating a synergy of energies of these people that is eager to know about these places and also eager to know how to restore it through the science.
Oh, just highlighting what Hugo mentioned. I'm an avid expedition cruiser, so I've been on a number of expedition
Yeah.
cruises and other travels. But I really love that our itineraries are going to be very exciting for passengers, and I think that's very important. If you're spending that much money and going that much trouble to get onto an expedition ship, you want to enjoy what everyone else would normally expect to see. If you're in the Antarctica, you want to see the penguins and the leopard seals and the whales that are very special down there. And if you're up in the Arctic, you want to see polar bears, right? And in between, you want to meet with communities or have the opportunity to potentially even swim with whales in the Caribbean. All of these things we've planned for passengers so that passengers can enjoy both learning a lot about science and watching it being done, maybe even actively contributing to that if that's what they want to do on the cruise, work with an oceanographer, work with a whale scientist for the day, but also get to go out and really have the classic experience you would expect to have in those beautiful places. So we are following the whale highways. We're grounded in this whale repopulation and the impact they have on the sea. So we're going from feeding ground to breeding ground all across the earth. And this is something that passengers can sail with us multiple times and have very, very different experiences every time because we'll be in different parts of the world.
One of the recent studies from travel agencies, they have shown that the demand for polar expedition is increasing. So from their survey, in 2024, there are more than 120,000 people who made the trip to Antarctica. It is a massive increase if we compare to 2017, which there's only 44,000. It's like triple amount of people who visit there. Would love to know if today there's more and more customers who visit to the polar region, will it create a negative impact to the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think this indeed is a very serious concern and something that the Antarctic Tour Operators Association, IATO, takes very seriously. So a couple of things. One is there are limitations to what people can do and what cruise companies can do in Antarctica in terms of how many people can go to shore and how that's managed when you're on the shore to ensure that we are not impacting the wildlife, but having a chance to see them. And as Hugo said, this is so critical. It's always that balance. Humans protect things that they see and experience much, much more than if they just read about it in a book. So it's to the benefit of this ecosystem that people see it and experience it and fall in love with it. But I do want to point out that demand is also increasing, driven by something quite, again, relevant to this podcast, right? It's that chance for last chance tourism idea, that idea that people want to get there before the glaciers melt and before the polar bears are extinct. And that's really tragic to think, but that's what's fueling a lot of that demand. So it's imperative upon cruise companies and anybody else who loves these places and Earth in general, because these places are so critical to all of the climate of Earth, all of it, that we find ways to get people out there to see it responsibly and then give them actions to take. How can they apply, not just see it, but then use their own influence and their own wealth to take action locally, whether it's regarding policies, whether it's donations or starting companies themselves or investing in companies that could further the protection and the flourishing of these places. This is an opportunity we have and we'll take seriously on PositivePolar to ensure our guests have the incredible experience, but also have the opportunity to know how, once they have fallen in love with these places, how they can continue to support these places in a very real way, in a very real and tangible way when they return home.
Yeah, and I also want to complement that, because most of these expedition cruise lines are going kind of almost to the same places. Because we have a different proposition, we are going to make also science on board, deep science focused on ocean restoration. We are going to go to also another places. Antarctica is huge. Antarctica is of the size of more than Australia, more than US, is huge. And it have been there a lot. I have been in places that no one has been there because I was working with the scientists. I have literally landed my helicopter where no one has been before. So that is what we do in the Navy with the scientists. We go where places that no human has been before. So I did that in the whole Antarctic Peninsula. Then I traveled with them through the Antarctic Peninsula up to the Ross Sea and up to New Zealand through Antarctica. Antarctica is huge. So, and in that, for example, in that track, we didn't see almost no one because no one was there, right? So the possibility of different places is also there for different itineraries that we are going to explore in a much more expedition type of cruise. That is supposed to be our cruise lines. I call expedition cruise line. We are going to be real science expedition cruise lines. And the other proposition that I will have, well, if somebody else also start doing like that, or if we scale a lot, that we can scale a lot, having a lot of ships, more ships there doing what Jen was doing with that limitation. She was saying with that limitation, going to different places, going with different itineraries, but also mimicking the whales, putting nutrients on the sea. More ships are better for Antarctica, are not worse, because now Antarctica have a lack of whales. The blue whale is there was thriving there with a lot of numbers has been
More than 90% are missing still.
more than 90% is still missing. So we need to really create that more biomass around Antarctica.
Yes.
And that's why I think that more ships like the one that we are proposing are better for Antarctica and not worse.
We could see that there is a very interesting point where PositivePolar trying to leverage the citizen science and the power of finance to regenerate our ocean ecosystem. But at the same time, we could also see the damage or the negative impacts when there is an increased number of visitors. One of the problem that recent studies have shown for the increased visitors is that the current transportation tools that people use to visit polar region oftentimes will emit greenhouse gas emissions, especially black carbon. And it actually will make the snow become darker. So it will accelerate the melting process, and it will create kind of a bad feedback loop that will harm the polar ecosystem. So we'd love to learn from the PositivePolar perspective. We know that there is a big part of the trip will be focused on deep science to regenerate the ocean ecosystem. But we would love to learn with the cruise itself, is there any sustainability practice to mitigate the problem that we mentioned about the black carbon?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Maybe 3 years ago, I will not have an answer for that. I will just say to you, we expect that what we are sinking, the carbon that we are sinking, will be more than our emissions that we are going to put into the atmosphere from the ship. That is our main theory, right? But right now, they are popping up a lot of companies that are providing a solution for this. What is called the synthetic fuel or fuel based on biomass. Right, so we have literally yesterday we have a meeting with a company from Denmark that is trying to do this. We have already been in conversations with a company from Germany also, and also a company from Chile that they are providing what is called a synthetic fuel or biomass fuel. These companies are still need to grow because they are kind of just starting. They are not able to produce now the amount of fuel that we need, but they are growing fast. And we expect that next year, at least they will provide fuel that will be carbon neutral and more clean, of course, for our boats, for example, for our boats, our Zodiacs that they are going to be in the ocean with the tourists, for our drones, and hopefully in the future for our main engines of the ship. And it's a growing technology, mostly based on biomass and also based on capture the carbon from a process that produces a lot of carbon. Then they mix it with hydrogen that usually take from the Chilean fjords, for example, and they create a synthetic fuel mixing this hydrogen with this carbon that they take from a dirty process or the atmosphere. That the energy that they use for that is usually clean energy based on wind or the sun, and we have a lot of that in a lot of places, as Chile, for example, but also some other places that have a lot of wind or sun. As Iceland, for example, has a lot of wind where we are planning to go, and some other places. So these technologies are growing, and we expect that our carbon footprint will be much more negative, because it's going to be already negative because of the carbon that we are seeking, right? But will be much more negative because of these fuels are going to be cleaner and cleaner for the cruise lines.
Well, I just wanted to highlight that when we talk about offering a platform for advancement of technology, this is another area that we would love to have companies doing work on our ship, whether it's capturing exhaust and turning that into a different kind of a substance that can be used more sustainably, or it's powering our boats or testing out new e-boats. Lots of places, lots of ideas for how we could support these companies in these polar environments, because once we have solutions like that, those things will scale to other cruise companies immediately. So much opportunity, but I know it can be very challenging for these small companies to get their technology out there into the polar environment where it's very different than a lab, and you really need to be out there to see if your batteries or your fuel or other things can be efficient out in those environments. And that's a platform we want to offer to these companies.
Exactly, and also what we offer is a demand, because it's in our vision to be much more cleaner, and sometimes this company has not a demand. They say, okay, I'm producing this fuel, but who's going to buy it?
Yeah, we'll be your first customers. If it's relevant, we'll be your first customers. And so we definitely invite people who listen to this podcast that might be developing such solutions and to talk with us about that. We'd love to learn more about what you're doing and whether or not where we're going to be could be helpful to you as you advance your technology.
Jen, remember a technology that is, for example, to capture the CO2 from the exhaust that is based on limestone. And then that limestone that is now fully of carbon, right? Of CO2, sorry, of carbon dioxide. Then the limestone can be used for construction because you have to. It's like a filter, right? So you take it out and then you put a new one, and that one you take it out instead of being only waste. You use it for a construction that is sustainable, right? So there's a lot of technologies, as Jim was saying, that are also we are willing to test and also be the ones that will buy this and provide a demand of these new technologies. Yeah.
Could you share or describe the current pilot success of the proposed solutions? So from our previous conversation, we have explored various topics and potentials that PositivePolar is able to achieve with the sustainable cruise. And we'd love to know if there is any pilot success that you would love to share.
So from the fundamental business, I think we covered that. Everyone is very clear. Demand is very high for expedition cruising, especially in the polar regions, but everywhere else we cruise. So the base business model is clear. There is greater demand than there is capacity for the foreseeable 3 to 5 years. And so that is real opportunity for us as a fundamental base business to capture the unmet demand from people who want to be in these places, having these experiences, but cannot get on a cruise ship that they would find exciting, such as an expedition cruise ship, as opposed to a cruise ship where you just go by and you see these environments. But you don't actually get out and experience them in that way, much less get a chance to work with scientists. As for the science itself, there's quite a bit of interesting science in the area of climate restoration, and particularly the area of ocean nourishment. And we could look at, for example, companies that have been finalists in the Elon Musk Carbon X Prize, right? There's 2 in particular I'd point to that are early proof of principle. One is Gigablue or Gigablue, I'm not quite sure how they pronounce it, out of Israel, and they've been doing great work off the coast of New Zealand in testing how to develop materials that would grow more phytoplankton and sink carbon. And they are doing that largely to address the shipping industry, the cargo shipping industry, and how they might be able to deploy such nutrients on these cargo ships. And still a lot more work to do, but they've already had some incredible pilot success, and in January certified through Puro.Earth their impact on carbon removal. Again, doing this marine CDR technique very much like what PositivePolar tends to do, and they were able to sell credits, forward credits, to the aviation industry. So I took that as a very strong signal from the market, both from an MRV perspective, that you can measure it, you can verify it, it can be third-party certified, the impact you have by growing phytoplankton, as well as that there's a demand from certain industries for these kinds of credits, largely because they're considered high-quality credits. They don't just sink carbon, but as Hugo pointed out, they increase biodiversity, and your listeners may know that that is a higher quality credit. And so already there's that example. And the second one I would point to is Ocean Nourishment Corporation, also a finalist in the Elon Musk Carbon X Prize. And they have been doing something that's more akin to what we're talking about, which is focused on developing synthetic whale poop. That's what they're doing. And they've been doing that now out of Australia for some years. And we look forward to, again, partnering with these sorts of companies to test their mixtures and to take them in the areas where we're going to sail, which are the whale highways, the places that whales normally would be traveling, and see how these mixtures work in those parts of the ocean, see what the impact they have on biodiversity and potentially carbon sinkage, and see if there's a way to scale it, to create a technology that any other cruise ship in those areas would also be able to spread these kinds of nutrients. But both of those I take as very strong signals to me that the science is ready to be translated in the ocean at large.
So there do have some like scientific research that has been adopted by other market players. And PositivePolar could actually provide a great platform or a great place to test these solutions and even to promote these kind of solutions.
Yes. Can you imagine, every night, if you, for any of your listeners who've done expedition cruise, you know that every day is an adventure. You get up early. It's not a cruise. These aren't the cruises where you sleep in. You're usually up very early at 6 or 7 a.m., getting a quick breakfast and then getting out as quickly as possible into the environment, a Zodiac or a hike on the ice, or if you're in the Caribbean, maybe you're going out to swim with some whales. So you're out all day and you come back and have an incredible dinner. And then there's usually options. You can go to the bar or lounge and have a nice relaxing drink and talk about your day with other people. What did you see? What did you see? Share pictures. Or you might go to a lecture in another part of the ship. There'll be a lecture. There'll be a historian. There'll be a scientist talking about, here's what I did today. And I saw these things. Here's my data. And now you're having a data discussion. Another lecture that we will do, and a series we'll have on our ship, will just be a series of lectures for people who want to learn more about the engineering and science behind climate restoration. And this is where I'd love to have people come and do a lecture about this really cool exhaust technology that turns it into limestone and how that translates into concrete. I have another person talking about a different company. And it's because we want these people to leave the ship excited about how they might invest their own money into these companies, how they might donate, or how they might otherwise drive forward whatever's getting in the way of those solutions from scaling, whatever maybe it's a policy issue, and there could be people on our ship that know the right people to call to get that unstuck. So we want to always be teaching people who have an interest, and there are a lot of people on expedition cruises who really love this kind of thing, to learn all the time about these opportunities.
5,000 passengers per year per ship at least, and also creating a movement, as Jen was describing. This is a movement of being this or seeing this problem with optimism and with in a positive way. And also, as I said all of the time, providing freedom. We are freedom providers because we think that our technology can allow us to do what we want. So that is our main concept.
Restore.
So climate education plays an important part inside the cruise.
Yes.
Yes, we have a terrific scientist. He's an engineer. He did work in NASA. He did design Google Maps, Google Earth. His name is Tim Forsman. He was just with us. We have a meeting with him in.
He's the former UN Chief Environmental Scientist, and he is designing and leading the entire programming together with our other folks on the team. On many cruise lines, and I've been on many, there's a real feeling that they teach you about climate, but in a very scary way and in a way that makes you feel very guilty for having visited these places, which is I've always found very strange as a passenger because I spent a lot of money to be here. You took my money and now you're making me feel guilty that I'm here. That doesn't make sense. I just thought this is not the way to have good customer service. Well, at PositivePolar, we're not going to make you feel guilty. We're going to make sure you understand the problem. There's real problems out there, but we believe in humanity and humanity's ingenuity and our ability to solve problems. And that's what humans are good at. And if we want to together as humanity restore the climate, we can, absolutely. And we at PositivePolar want to inspire that kind of hope married with action, right? And again, that's why the constant drumbeat with folks to have fun doing some science. Science is fun. So have some fun and see beautiful places, but also you'll leave the ship, I guarantee you. People, after spending 10 days immersed so deeply in this, it doesn't leave them quickly. They will continue to work on these goals and set their own goals for how they could contribute.
Yeah. They will feel proud of being with us and not ashamed. They will tell the message. They will spread the message. Because right now some passengers goes there and they said, oh, okay, yeah, but I know that it did some harm, so I will not tell too much. We are going to do the opposite. We are going to make them feel proud so that we can spread the message that there's a technology, a way of ocean restoration. If we restore the ocean wildlife in the sea, that will be the solution of a lot of problems, not only the climate, for fish stocks, for provide protein for a growing population, for biodiversity, or could be even the cure of cancer. There are people are searching about why the whales don't have cancer, being a so complex organism, and maybe we can also provide a solution, because we are going to also work in the biodiversity.
Both of you just mentioned a very important message, a key message that busts the common misunderstanding from customers that visiting to the polar region, you don't necessarily need to feel guilty. Instead, if you truly understand the problem, engage the process with scientists and create the bigger positive impact to the whole ocean ecosystem and to our environment, you actually are making a positive difference together. Right? It's very exciting and inspiring for people to engage, bring the general public together with scientists to make the change. Speaking to this process, I would love to learn how does PositivePolar define the solution as success or failure. So from our previous conversation, we do have talked about that the goal is trying to bring at least 5,000 customers and visitors per ship per year to have a deeper understanding of our polar region. And I would love to learn how do PositivePolar measure the positive biodiversity impact and measure the climate impact to our polar region.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because we have just come from the EarthX conference in Dallas, and yeah, that was one of the problems that they were highlight, how to measure this exactly, our positive impact. And there is some solutions that I'll tell you with the different fuels. Now it's not easy, but there's a lot of technologies that are allowing us to, for example, from a satellite, you can measure the phytoplankton bloom, right? So they will be able to measure how we are creating this bloom of phytoplankton, seeing the difference of the phytoplankton that was there and how it's growing. So that will be an immediate measure of life creation. But now, if you want to kind of only focus on carbon sinking, that is kind of challenging because the ocean moves a lot, the currents move a lot, and you have wind, you have the currents, you have so this phytoplankton is expected, or as I said, the whole biomass is expected to at least be sink 10% of that carbon will go into the deep of the sea, right? So that is something that has been tested, is known as a general thing. So and we will have to advance in kind of the technologies that could be cost effective to effectively measure that, because right now it's very expensive to try to measure exactly how much carbon are we going to sink. We can generally say that 10% of the excedent of biomass that we are creating will sink, and that's a lot. It's a lot of carbon. So but to measure exactly in the sea, I'm from the Navy. I know that the sonars are expensive, the mini submarines are expensive, the buoys that you put into the sea, they are all expensive stuff, and sometimes you have to just let them go because it's impossible to recover them because they just follow the currents and all that stuff. And that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for new companies to show up and also try to provide us solutions of to try to measure the carbon. But the good thing is that we are not depending on that. We don't depend of the money that we can sell of carbon credits because our company is based on our guest, right? So we are not in a kind of rush of trying to measure the carbon because we are going to be broke. As some companies did broke because of that. They are already companies of the ocean had tried this, only focused on the carbon sinking, and because exactly to your point, they were not able to really measure how much carbon we were sinking because of the complex of the ocean. Finally, they did get broke, right? But that's not our case. We are going to, because we are based on our guest, and we are focused on the ocean wildlife, on restoring the biomass, right, and the biodiversity, of course. Jen, do you have another point of view?
I think all of that is correct. And just to emphasize, it's another very important area of research for us. Again, we don't have to, we're not the first ones. So we can piggyback and learn and extend what others are doing. So for example, I mentioned 2 companies earlier. They are very active in advancing technologies, and one has already been certified MRV from Pure.Earth. So clearly they have mechanisms by which they're measuring that we and our engineers can also learn from and take into the parts of the ocean we'll be in and think about how we might need to evolve those buoys or sensors so that they work appropriately as needed for the parts of the ocean we're in. That's a very important problem to be solved. We'd love to be part of solving that on our platform. And secondly, I point to the NASA PACE satellite. And if anyone doesn't know about that page, the PACE, just look up PACE NASA satellite. It's incredible. And the data that's available there is free. Of course, you'd need to have very experienced data scientists and oceanographers to truly interpret what's happening. And that's where we look forward and collaborate with people on that. But it's incredible to know that that's how important phytoplankton is, that the United States launched a satellite to measure that. We understand as a country, it's critical to the base of the food chain, and it's a harbinger of everything that happens in the ocean.
Yeah.
So we all need to understand and care about phytoplankton. So what a benefit to us that the satellite just launched a few years ago, actually. And so we will take full advantage of that and not have to launch our own satellite, because that would be really hard to do and very expensive. So
yeah. So the tools are already there.
Tools are there. We'll be leveraging them for our purposes with a lot of really smart astrophysicists and engineers that we already are working with to figure out how to really tune that in a way that could help us understand our impact and scale it again, because that's the whole idea, is we want every ship to be able to do good things in the ocean.
So before we wrap up, we would love to know what support does PositivePolar need, and how could people practice the climate movement in their daily life?
That's an excellent question. Well, the support that we need right now, we in these 2 years and more than $2.5 million invested, we have created everything what is needed to launch a science expedition cruise company. Now we need the money from investors to finally set sail with our dream. The good news is that could be almost anyone, and because in our core concept we have always think that this is a movement. So you can invest from $100 through a crowdfunding campaign that we have in wefunder.com. So anyone in the world can invest from $100. And of course, obviously, we would like you to invest more. So there's some perks that are mostly focused on the people that will be able to travel with us in the future. Because as I said, we as humans, we love and support what we experience, right? So we want to encourage you to try to experience expeditions for ocean restoration with us. So the perks are focused on benefits that will encourage you to travel in the future with us. And the more important to be known in this crowdfunding campaign is that since an amount of $25,000 and beyond, you will be able to bring a partner for free into the future cruise that you will take with us. With that, your investment will be returned immediately, because the amount of a ticket in average in the cabin that we are proposing that you are going to have with your partner is more or less the same price or even more. So when you travel with us, your investment will be returned immediately, because instead of paying 2 tickets for going to Antarctica, for going to the Chilean fjords, for going to Panama, for going to the Caribbean, for going to Greenland, to Svalbard, instead of paying 2, you will pay only 1 in the future cruise that we are going to have. So your investment will be recovered immediately.
I would say, yes, if you're in a position to invest even a small amount and become a partial owner of this new kind of company, I hope you will. In the meantime, get to know the ocean. The ocean controls our climate. It's so easy for us as humans living on land to forget that. And there is no solution. There is no solution to the climate crisis that does not involve the ocean. The ocean controls the climate. And the most important creature in the ocean that helps it do its work is the whale. So get to know the ocean, get to know the whale pump, and demand that there are companies and solutions and funding for work that will advance harnessing natural processes in the ocean to solve for our climate crisis. That's something you can do today.
So for those who would love to follow up with the work, we will attach the information to our podcast description. Free riding problems are a sign of our society's failure. When it fails systematically, which is hard to reverse. Climate change is a growing urgent global problem that will increase the number of irreversible disasters. As a climate stakeholder, if you would love to minimize the free riding problems with collective climate movement, follow Optivide to receive the latest information.